Hello everyone, and welcome to our VBA tutorial series. In this video, we'll be delving into a crucial topic: how to create and manipulate dates and times in Excel VBA. Firstly, we'll cover the basics of date and time functions in VBA, including date, time, and date serial. Then, we'll move on to formatting dates and times in a way that suits our needs by utilizing the format function along with the now function. Next up, we'll learn how to extract specific components from date and time values. This includes grasping how to extract the year, month, day, hour, minute, and second with precision. As we progress, we'll discover how to perform calculations involving dates and times. This involves adding or subtracting a specified duration from a date or time value, allowing for various useful applications. Finally, we'll explore how to use the timer function effectively to measure the duration of specific tasks, a valuable skill for optimizing our VBA projects. Alright, let's open the VBA editor, and let's get started. In our first macro called date and time, we're demonstrating three VBA functions related to date and time. Let's start with the first line. In the first line, we're using the date function. This function returns the current system date. We're assigning this value to cell A1 on sheet 2 of our workbook. When we run this line, you can see that cell A1 on sheet 2 populates with today's date. Remember, the date format may vary based on your system settings. Moving on to the second line, we're using the time function. Similar to the date function, time returns the current system time, down to the second. We're assigning this value to cell A2 on sheet 2. As we run this line of code, you'll observe that cell A2 populates with the current time. In the third line, we are utilizing the date serial function. This powerful function allows us to create a date by providing it with inputs for the year, month, and day. In this example, we use the values 2020, 3, and 21, representing the 21st of March 2020. As a result, this particular date is assigned to cell A3 on sheet 2. When we execute this line of code, you can see that cell A3 is now populated with the date we've crafted using the date serial function. By using these functions, you can generate and manipulate dates and times in VBA, either based on the current system date and time, or by creating specific dates using the date serial function. Let's now move on to our second code example in Module 2. This macro demonstrates how we can format both dates and times using VBA. In the first line, we're using the format function with the now function as its first argument. Now retrieves the current date and time. We then use a format string to format it. The result is a full date and time string showing the day of the week spelled out, the month spelled out, the day of the month, the year in 4 digits, and the time down to seconds. Let's run this line and check the output in cell A5 on sheet 2. As you can see, it worked as expected, displaying the current date and time in a format we specified. Next, in the second line, we have made a few modifications to our format string. This time, it will display the current date and time in the following format: abbreviated day of the week, abbreviated month, day of the month, the year in 4 digits, and the time down to the minutes. When we run this line of code, you will see the output in cell A6. Great! Finally, in our third line, we're using a shorter format string. This format includes the abbreviated day of the week, numeric month, day of the month, and the last 2 digits of the year. When we run this, you will see the formatted date appear in cell A7. The true beauty of the format function lies in its incredible flexibility in displaying dates and times. The patterns we've explored in this video are merely the tip of the iceberg. There are countless ways to mix and match different components of date and time. For example, you might want to display only the month and year, or perhaps you require the date in a very specific format for a report. With the format function's pattern manipulation, you can achieve these and many other formats effortlessly. I encourage you to experiment and explore. Try different combinations for representing days, months, and years. You'll discover just how versatile the format function can be. it opens up a world of possibilities for tailoring date and time displays to your exact needs. Great, now we're moving on to our third macro, named Extract Specific Parts from Date and Time. Here we'll be using some more date and time functions, specifically the year, month, day, hour, minute, and second functions to extract specific components of the current date and time. Our first line of code in this macro extracts the current year from the current date and time, which we get by using the now function. As we run this line, you can see the current year appear in cell A9 on sheet 2. Next, we're going to extract the current month with this second line of code. This will give us the numeric representation of the current month. For instance, if the current month is July, we'll see 7 in cell A10. Let's run this line and see the result. Great, moving on. Next, we'll use the day function to obtain the current day of the month. Once we execute this line, you'll see today's date number displayed in cell A11. Similarly, in the following lines, we leverage the hour, minute, and second functions to retrieve the current hour, minutes, and seconds respectively. The results are then assigned to cells A12, A13, and A14 on sheet 2, giving us the precise time components of the current moment. These functions are extremely useful when you need to perform calculations or operations based on specific components of date and time. By breaking down the values into manageable parts, they become instrumental in handling complex calculations and operations. Alright, let's move on to our fourth macro. Here we're going to learn how to perform calculations with dates and times in Excel VBA. We will add to a date and also to a time. You might be surprised how simple and straightforward it can be. Our first line of code in this macro is quite simple but powerful. We are adding 1 to the current date. In Excel VBA, adding 1 to a date gives us the date of the next day. So when we run this line, you will see tomorrow's date appear in cell A16 on sheet 2. But you're not limited to just adding 1. You can add any number to a date. For instance, if you want to calculate the date 30 days from now, you can simply use date plus 30. And likewise, to go back in time, you can subtract from the date. So date minus 7 would give you the date a week ago. This flexibility allows us to perform a wide variety of date calculations, which can be useful for setting up things like schedules, deadlines, or time-based conditions in our VBA projects. Great, next, we will work with the time. But before we perform the calculation, we need to format cell A17 to display the time correctly. This is done using the next line of code, which sets the cell format to display hours, minutes, and seconds, along with AM, PM. Now we're ready to perform a calculation on the time. This line of code is adding 3 hours to the current time. The function timeValue converts a string that represents a time into a time serial that VBA can understand. So, after running this line of code, you'll see the current time plus 3 hours in cell A17. These examples demonstrate how you can easily manipulate dates and times using basic arithmetic in VBA. This becomes particularly handy when dealing with tasks like scheduling, reminders, or time-specific calculations in your Excel tasks. Great, now let's move on to our last code example in this tutorial. This macro is particularly interesting as it allows us to measure the duration of a task. Understanding how long tasks take to execute can be a crucial aspect of optimizing and improving your VBA programs. Alright, let's break this macro down. First, we're declaring a variable, start time, as a double. This will hold the start time of our task in seconds. Next, the timer function in VBA returns the number of seconds that have passed since midnight. So by setting start time equal to timer here, we're effectively capturing the current time in seconds. Next, we're using the wait method of the application object to pause the execution of our macro for 3 seconds. This line simulates a task that takes some time to complete. Finally, we calculate the duration of our task. Again, we use the timer function to capture the current time in seconds and subtract start time from this. The result is the number of seconds that have elapsed since we started our task, in other words, the task duration. We then write this duration, along with a descriptive message, to cell A19 on sheet 2. Now let's run this macro to see how it works in action. Watch carefully as the task duration appears in cell A19 after the 3-second wait. It's a simple but effective way to monitor how long certain operations take in your VBA code. Also, you may have noticed something interesting. When we look at the task duration recorded in cell A19, you may notice that it is slightly less than the 3 seconds we had our code wait for. This discrepancy is not due to the timer function, which accurately measures the time elapsed from one point to another. Instead, it is more likely due to the application.wait method, which does not guarantee an exact wait time. It pauses Excel for approximately the specified amount of time, but the actual pause can vary slightly based on system performance and other factors. However, for the purposes of our tutorial today, the timer function serves as a straightforward and easy-to-use option for demonstrating the concept of task duration. And there you have it. That brings us to the end of this tutorial video. In this video, we've covered some fundamental aspects of creating and manipulating dates and times in Excel VBA. We've learned how to display current dates and times, format them in various ways, extract their individual components, perform basic calculations, and even measure task duration. These foundational skills are critical when dealing with date and time data in VBA, and will undoubtedly improve your efficiency in building and managing your VBA projects. Remember, practice makes perfect. So don't hesitate to experiment with these codes, modify them, and see how they affect the results. You'll gain more insights and deepen your understanding of VBA's date and time handling capabilities. Thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for more tutorials. Feel free to drop your questions or thoughts in the comments section below. Happy coding, and I'll see you in the next video.